Week 5 has officially kicked off with Denver's struggles continuing as the season goes on. I'm Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. We have a big show planned for you guys tonight, previewing the rest of Week 5's slate of games. We're going to talk about Denver's struggles. We're going to talk about Ravens, Bengals, Rams, Cowboys, bunch of different matchups. And joining us and returning to the show after being a guest with us over this summer, we have Derek Houle. Derek, welcome back to the show. We have some new listeners. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Like Adam said, I'm Derek. I joined the show, I think, sometime in July. We did a divisional preview for the NFC South. Some hits, some misses. I think I had the Saints projected a little bit better than they started off, but I did kind of foresee this tough start for the Bucks. But I'm just glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, and that was you had the Bucks close to the top. Just the Saints, and maybe we should have seen it coming, but Jameis Winston his turnover issues have kind of returned here. After we thought he had things figured out, maybe it was all Sean Payton, you think?
Yeah, I definitely think there's been a shift from him. Obviously, he's not healthy, right? We've heard the reports that he has a couple of broken discs in his back, and he's clearly not healthy. He's not practicing. I find it hard to believe he's going to play this week, but it doesn't I don't know if that's enough of a cop out to look how he looked in weeks 2 and 3, where he just he looked like Jameis. I'll say that. He was slinging the ball around, taking a lot of deep shots. I guess the laser eye surgery didn't go as he'd hoped, and he's still missing some underneath linebackers that are just missing some things. But I don't put it past this team to turn it around. I still think they're a really good defense. They have talent all over the ball, and a couple of rookies who could make it pop. One of the guys, Olave, we might talk about him a little later today. He's looked really good. He has the potential to be, a top 2 or 3 receiver from this class. So I'm excited to see what he can do. But I'm not throwing the towel in yet for the Saints team. I think they can string some gritty, tough football together as we move into the second quarter of this football season.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, we still have a lot of football left, I believe. So we're going into Week 5. So we're only 4 games in for the Saints. So they have plenty of time to turn it around. A lot of adjustments to make, but they have some things to be optimistic about. But we're going to jump right into it. So Denver's struggles, as I mentioned, continued on Thursday Night Football versus the Colts, who have been struggling themselves. They had some expectations with a new quarterback in Matt Ryan, and off to yet another tough start for the Colts, but a tough start for the Bengals as well, who just got Russell Wilson this past offseason, and they still can't seem to figure things out. They lost to the Colts. What was it? I believe 12-9. It was 12 to 9.
12-9. Yeah. It was ugly.
Which is essentially a baseball score, a high baseball score, if you will, but still baseball score. Not exactly a fun. It's what the defensive battle people who are like, I love seeing these defensive fights. They were pretty happy yesterday, even though it was just ugly football. But do we see Denver turning this around in any way as this season continues? We'll start with you, Derek.
Okay, well, I'll be honest. There's definitely some glaring concerns, and it kind of all seems like a joke to Russell Wilson. I don't know if you guys saw, but in his post-game conference, he the last thing he said before, as he was walking off the podium, was "Broncos country, let's ride." And it's like a game. I don't know if I was a Broncos fan and looking at his contract, he's under big money until 2028. There's an out somewhere in there, but it doesn't come. It comes with a pretty big cap hit, and but indifferently, there's a lot of red flags. I think there's some salvageable parts from that offense if you're talking about fantasy perspective, right? In a bad game, I still think Cortland Sutton saw a vast majority of the targets. I think he had I think you want to say he had 11 or 12 targets last night. So from a fantasy perspective, I wouldn't throw in the towel yet. I'm not sitting there panicking. But as the Broncos team, and we kind of talked about this division as being some kind of juggernaut. The Broncos and the Raiders too kind of seem to be giving you some pause to calling that a juggernaut division. And so I'm curious to see what does happen in these next couple of weeks. Their schedule does get a little bit lighter, but I kind of thought that going into last night against the Colts, and they failed time after time with Aaron Rodgers with Russell Wilson to bring it home.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that post game interview, and I remember I saw a clip of it where he was asked if he was worried, and he was like, "Yeah, no, like this struggle has been actually really fun, figuring things out and everything. I'm not worried. Broncos country, let's ride." Yeah. All that stuff. Like he just doesn't seems
out of touch.
Worried. Like when as a fellow Tom Brady guy, when that happens to him, he's not happy.
No,
he's looking for ways to figure things out. So I definitely get that. But CJ, what are your thoughts?
Well, Adam, the Broncos are a team that are currently 2-3, and in all conceivability should probably be 0-5. And they play like an 0-5 team. And I know there's a saying, a win is a win is a win, but I disagree because there's a difference between a convincing win and an ugly win. And on the off chance Denver does win a game, they win ugly. And a lot of it, I hate to say it, is Russell Wilson. And I don't know why he's being so cavalier about a loss, because plain and simple, he sucked. And it's a bad look when your old team, the Seahawks, have Geno Smith at quarterback, and statistically speaking, Geno Smith is playing better. That is just awful if you're a Broncos fan. And a lot of people, it's early, are saying that Seattle won the trade. I wouldn't go that far just yet, but something's got to change in Broncos country. Furthermore, their head coach, Nathaniel Hackett, I'm not a fan of his management, to put it nicely. And are we sure Jameis Winston's the only one with the vision problem? Because Russell Wilson couldn't see a wide open KJ Hamler. And Hamler has every right to be frustrated. If anything, he should be screaming at Russell Wilson. He really should. And it's just, I know that, you can't just throw a team together and go compete. I know there's going to be growing pains, but your roster is too stacked to be this poor. That's really all I have to say. So honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if they fired Hackett after one season. That's like how bad this is.
Yeah. That seat's red hot. If I'm the new owners, the Broncos ownership was who just took over. I can't imagine being too pleased with the investment in the head coach nor the investment in the quarterback. And we know it's a players' league. Coaches can make an impact, but at the end of the day, it's a players' league. And I wouldn't be feeling so hot about Nathaniel Hackett right now if I'm the new ownership in Denver.
Yeah, look, there's no two ways about it. The coaching has been absolutely horrendous. And you would think with such a stacked roster that they would figure things out. But looking at as this continues, I'm starting to look at this towards Russell Wilson and think this isn't all on the coach at this point. I mean, look, when I watched Man in the Arena, and at one point I remember hearing Tom Brady talk about when he was talking to Wes Welker, and he was yelling at him, and he was saying, "I know when everybody is open on the field, don't tell me to throw you the ball, because I'm going to throw to whoever is open at whichever time, and I'm going to do what's best for the team. So you are supposed to know when and where everybody is open." And when KJ Hamler was open on that last play, he was looking towards the left side of the field. This guy was wide open, and he didn't know he was open. And then during the press conference, he was all easy breezy, like, oh, Broncos country, let's ride. He was all, I'm not worried. This has been a fun process. I'm glad you're having fun, dude. I'm glad you're having fun. Because if I was losing like this, if any other quarterback who has any sort of competitive mindset, the Tom Brady's, I'll even say the Aaron Rodgers of the world, or let's even say Seahawks Russell Wilson, they would not be happy about this. They would not. You had Aaron Rodgers during preseason complaining about his wide receivers after practice. This guy right now, after being paid, has lost his competitive edge. And it all look, the most important things to me in football, quarterback and coaching. And then the roster is obviously important as well. The coaching has been bad. The quarterback has gotten lazy. You put those two things together and you have a talented team that's 2-3 and is in danger of potentially finishing last in this division, where I had them being a wild card team. So it does not look good for these Broncos. I'd love to get Brett back on the show, our Broncos fan, because I'd love to get his thoughts on this, but it doesn't look good at all. It does not.
No, I agree. We'll see what they can do. But I'm hoping they turn it around. I'd like to see this division become a little more competitive. We still get to see a Herbert Mahomes maybe duel to the finish, but I don't want to see Denver fall out of this too early. So that run to make them to give it a shot is not feasible. I'd like to see them be able to give it a shot later in the year. So let's hope they turn it around.
Certainly, and it's going to require Russell Wilson getting his head screwed on straight and finding a way for this team to be better coached, because this team has the talent. They have the potential to compete with honestly anybody in all of football, I would say, but they have to figure it out. There's plenty of time for them to do so. But I've always loved Russell Wilson, and it pains me to talk about him the way I have so far tonight. But there's no way around it. The guy's he's been lazy. He's let's say he's not actually fat, but he's fat and happy because he got paid. He's in a place where he clearly loves it there, but you got to start winning, dude. You got to start winning, especially with the team they have. The window is closing because eventually you're going to have to pay all this young talent, and they're not going to be able to because you got paid all this money. So clock's ticking. Clock is ticking because before you know it, in a few years, this Denver Broncos team's going to be mediocre. And it's going to be like the Seahawks all over again towards the tail end of his career there, where he's thinking, this team's not that good. They're not really contenders. So they have to figure something out there. But we do want to move on. Do we have any other thoughts on this game before we move on to our next segment?
None for me.
No, I don't have any.
All right. Well, the AFC North, as you guys know, has always been a competitive division, and this year has been no exception. And we have two teams, both 2-2, looking to stay competitive. Ravens and Bengals. We're going to talk about that matchup and who needs it more. We'll get to that next. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast. Adam Wright here, along with CJ Medeiros, special guest Derek Houle. So we are on to the primetime matchup on Sunday's slate of games. The Bengals are visiting the Ravens. Both teams are 2-2. Both have had some struggles so far in this season. So I ask you guys, which of these AFC North arch rivals needs this victory the most? Derek, I'll start with you.
I'll let CJ kick this one off. I kind of love
CJ?
the
All right.
trashing of the Broncos, so I'm gonna let CJ take this.
Let's see what he has to say.
Hey, thanks, Derek. So, yeah, this is certainly a must-win for both teams. And believe me when I say, this game, I know it's early, I know it's only week 5, but this game could really have some big implications later on down the line because both of these teams are good, both of them off to a sluggish start, and this might be a separator for them. Maybe, maybe not, but it very well could be. And for the Bengals, Adam and I, we've spoken of this ad nauseum. We know that the Super Bowl hangover is real. It's not analytical, not even slightly, but we know it's real. And the Bengals, Lamar Jackson's playing well, but a lot of it's the coaching because Harbaugh just takes too many risks. We saw it last year too. So we have two very flawed teams, but both have a lot of expectations coming together. And I feel that this win would mean infinitely more for the Ravens than the Bengals because, the Bengals, we know what they are, They just went to the Super Bowl. But for the Ravens, Lamar's duking it out for a big contract, be it in Baltimore or be it elsewhere. And, you've got a lot of unproven guys on that team. And Harbaugh, a lot of Ravens fans that I know actually want him gone. So, I'm not going to take up too much time, but I will say, with keeping all that in mind, this is a game that in my mind is a lot more important for the Ravens. Derek?
Yeah, so I do agree that it's important for both teams. I will go as I won't go as far as to say it's a must win for both sides. It is week 5. You're gonna have a team that's 2-3. And I will say though, it's a stacked conference, so you don't want to fall behind too far. I actually kind of feel this game might be more important for the Bengals, and here's why to me. They had they started 0-2, as we all know. They looked really, really tough coming out of the gate. Then week 3, they got a pretty good win, and then but it was still it was only over the Jets. Keep that in mind. The next week they played the Miami Dolphins, and did they really dominate that game? And to me, I don't think so. I think they kind of limped into that win after watching Tua nearly die on the football field. And he took a really brutal shot. It was demoralizing. Miami never felt like they were a threat in that football game. So I really think the pressure's on the Bengals to go get a win against a good football team. I'm not saying the Dolphins aren't a good football team. I'm not saying that they won't be a good football team if they have Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback for an extended amount of time. But that's a pretty demoralizing situation after watching Tua go off the way he did and all the noise surrounding them for that whole second half. I want to see the Bengals prove it against a good football team. They're going to have to go out there and earn it against a dynamic Ravens offense. That being said, I kind of like them for their receivers and what Joe Burrow can do to try and pick apart this Ravens secondary that's been a little banged up. They've been kind of down on the depth chart and have had at some point starting cornerbacks from the practice squad. They've gotten a little bit healthier. That's not to say they're not still banged up, and they might be able to take some shots with some guys who can really fly and deep threats in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think this could be a really high-scoring game. I guess that Ravens team can be dynamic. We've seen how special Lamar Jackson can be, but he's kind of been that whole team. If you can find a way you can't neutralize Lamar Jackson. You'll never be able to do that. He's too dynamic and he's just too versatile to completely shut him down. But you got to find a way to kind of inhibit some of his special abilities and slow him down just a little bit because he's just been so much of that Ravens offense. If you can alter him and alter that game, their offensive game plan might kind of do a tailspin. So that's my thoughts on that game. I think it's important for both, but I wouldn't call it a season if either team do lose.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a must-win either for either team, but both teams probably do need this win pretty badly because this is a very competitive division, maybe outside of Pittsburgh, if granted, if Pittsburgh, figures it out. But I would say the team that needs this the most, on contrary to CJ's pick to the Ravens, I'm going to go with the Bengals. The Bengals made the Super Bowl last year, and we do know what they potentially can be. But as you said, CJ, the Super Bowl hangover is real, and it's a real mental factor. And if you go 2-3 with a Super Bowl loss on your shoulders, that's significantly more crucial, I'll say, than the Ravens, who don't have that on their shoulders if they go 2-3, because they can still figure it out afterwards. But you started off 0-2. You figured it out. You've gotten a couple of wins under your belt. You're gaining some confidence. Now you have this division rival who's a pretty competitive team. So if you were to beat this team and still be able to protect your quarterback, which has been an issue for the Bengals so far, then that's huge that's huge for Cincinnati. They figure things out. They start to protect their quarterback more. They get the ball off to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, the Tyler Boyds of the world. They figure things out with Hayden Hurst. That's huge. And I think the Bengals really need this win. And versus if they were to lose, now you started 0-2, you got a couple wins, and then you cap it off with another loss to a division rival who's a very competitive team. So I look at this and I think they do need it. This is the Super Bowl hangover is real, as much as I hate that it is, because there's nothing analytical about it, but it's real. And so you need all the wins you can get, especially after a tough start like this from the Bengals. A lot of new faces on that offensive line. So I think they could use the extra jolt of confidence there.
I agree.
You're muted, CJ.
Oh, sorry. But I mean, Adam, I do agree with you. But like I said, there's a lot more, I think, at stake, just like for the Ravens, especially, like I said, with the future of Lamar Jackson. Then again, that's just me.
Yeah. So looking at, the Ravens certainly need this as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big game for both teams. But look, I just look at this Bengals team, and they have the roster and they have expectations, And like another thing to look at, and I'm not sure if this is a real thing either, because it is a real stat, but like, is it just a coincidence? But what is it, like a quarterback who goes to his first Super Bowl and loses? I'm not sure what the exact stat is, and they never go back again, or they never win again. No,
I think it's they never win again.
Did.
Only 5 quarterbacks have gone back to the Super Bowl after losing the Super Bowl. That's not one. That's 5 who have lost the Super Bowl and ever got another chance to win one in a game.
But how many of them ever won again? Because I know Kelly didn't.
Elway
so
did.
The 5 that made it back are Brady, Warner, Kelly, Peyton Manning, and Drew. Is it Drew? No, Drew Brees lost. Yeah.
No, Drew Brees has only been to 1 Super Bowl and he won.
No, I think he went to 2 because they had the Katrina year and then they lost to the Colts. No, you're right.
No, they beat the Colts.
That's right. They beat the Colts, but it was just that one in the Katrina. So yeah, I can't think of the 5th one, but I think it's 3 or 4 have gone back and won a Super Bowl. It's really slim pickings. The case in point is it's not many. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number, but it's not many.
And how many after losing their first Super Bowl?
Yeah,
because
I don't know.
I think there was something about that where it was.
I think it was like, I know Elway did it, but there's another one. Jim Kelly didn't.
Yeah, Jim Kelly made it back a few times.
Oh, Dan Marino lost. Wait, didn't he lose a Super Bowl and he never came back or something like that?
Back. Yeah, there's a long list of quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Marino's a famous one because he made it. And everyone thought this kid's going to win Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl. He did it at a young age, never made it back. And a lot of that's on the Dolphins because they wasted such a great talent, one of the all-time great quarterbacks in this league. and especially for the time frame that he was in, where it was very run heavy, not much passing. And I know we're getting off topic, but just while we're on the topic of quarterbacks who make their first Super Bowl and lose it, tough weight on Joe Burrow's shoulders, but could figure it out. But as I mentioned, a lot of pressure on this Bengals team. Big mental issue with that. But I do want to move to our next topic. But anything else on this before we move on to Rams Cowboys?
I don't think so.
Nope.
All right, guys. Well, Cooper Rush, the career backup quarterback, and the Dallas Cowboys are 3-1. And Cooper Rush is 3-0. They now go up against the Los Angeles Rams, who are 2-2, but are still a force to be reckoned with. And we'll talk about the possibility of the Cowboys potentially pulling off the upset there. We'll get to that next. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm Adam Wright, CJ Medeiros, special guest Derek Houle. And so the Rams and Cowboys will be facing off on Sunday. And so I'm just toying around with the possibilities here. If Dallas actually wins, and let's say they look good doing it, do we have to take Cooper Rush and the Cowboys seriously?
Derek, you want to start?
Yeah, well, I'm going to break that down into two parts, if I may.
Yeah.
And nothing against Cooper Rush. He's looked great in the games he's started. The last 4 starts he's made, he's won all 4. So I'll say, yes, we have to take Dallas seriously. But no, I'm not sure we have to take Cooper Rush as the Cowboys quarterback seriously. We've seen this before. We've seen guys succeed and take over for a starter after an injury or after a tough start.
Nick Foles.
We've seen Ryan Tannehill come in from Mariota when no one thought that was possible. We saw that with this guy named Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. But regardless, Dak Prescott's getting paid a lot of money. Jerry Jones is an egotistical, quite an egotistical guy. So I wouldn't put it past him to, as soon as Dak's out there, ready to go, put him out there. Now, if Dak comes back and they start losing some games, then we might see the possibility of a change. But I really don't see a situation in which Dak Prescott's healthy and doesn't return to that starting role. And the reason I think we should take Dallas seriously is they have an interesting offense. They lost Amari Cooper, but they still have some pieces. Michael Gallup's just getting back up to full strength. We saw him last week. He was slotted back into that kind of Amari Cooper volume role that he was buried behind for those last few years. And I'm eager to see what this offense can do. I think they can run the ball pretty well too. I know Zeke is not the Zeke of old, and Pollard's taken a lot of touches, but it's still a decent group. I don't think we should totally throw it, wave the white flag and say Zeke is totally toast. He might not be the guy he was, but I still think he can get touches and give you some good runs. He's looked decent in the games he's had, and Pollard is that young spark who might be able to break off a 50-yard run and get the offense moving. But where their real value lies is that defense. That defense can fly. They can get after the quarterback. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Micah Parsons and his future as, he's one of the few talents who can do so many different things. He can rush the quarterback inside and out. He can set the edge in the run game. He can play as a coverage linebacker if he needs to. We saw him play a little middle linebacker towards the end of last year. His diversity and versatility on defense really is unmatched by anyone we have in today's NFL. So I'm eager to see what he can do and continue to be. But he's paired with some good pass rushers and a formidable secondary. I think this defense can really carry this team, even if Dak isn't the Dak we might expect to come back.
Yeah, that is a fair point, separating the Cowboys from Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush might be able to play. We don't know. We haven't seen a big enough sample size, but they're going to want to put Dak Prescott back in once he's healthy, especially with Jerry Jones and the contract they gave him. But
yeah,
CJ,
no way Dak doesn't come back and start. They might flip week 9, 10, 11 if there's an issue, but Dak's getting that role back.
Yeah, he could come back, but I mean, they got to put him back in. You can't give him that contract. But CJ, what are your thoughts?
If, and it's a big if, Cooper Rush beats the Rams, oh boy, he might be a little bit on the legit side. And I mean, we obviously know when Dak's going to start when he comes back. But mark my words, if Cooper Rush beats the Rams and then Dak comes back and they start losing again, the fans will cry for Cooper Rush as well they should. And if Rush keeps winning, there's a saying. I said this on the last episode. There's an old saying called, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, I mean, why would you stop a good thing? I mean, I know Dak's making a lot of money, but you have to remember, calling people Tom Brady's insane. We have to remember when Tom Brady took over for Drew Bledsoe literally he was like $100 million man.
First $100 million quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Derek. And it's like, so it's not out of the question, but Jerry Jones is going to want that's how it is. But I will bring up that there's a flip side to this issue. If Cooper Rush loses, then all of his magic, all of his hype is going to disappear. Because, it's really quite a novel thing. He's undefeated as a starter. Yeah, not anymore. That's literally his only thing. And if they lose, and especially lose handily, then everyone's just going to forget him. He's only as good as he keeps winning. It doesn't even matter how they win. But yeah, I would. But if he does beat the Rams, I would actually argue for a quarterback controversy, especially if Dak comes back and they don't win.
Might you also argue, if they lose, but it depends on how they lose? Like if they come close and they no cigar.
All right, if it's like a high-scoring shootout, like let's just say 38-35, I know that's high, but bear with me. But if the Cowboys lose, but they come close and Cooper Rush is like 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, then I could see the Magic still being alive.
Yeah, I mean, if he lays an egg, then it's all gone.
All bets are off at that point.
The Cooper Rush train has lost all of its passengers at that point.
Yeah.
But the way I look at it, and CJ, you took the take right out of – you stole my take.
Sorry.
Because I just pulled up a tab for Drew Bledsoe's contract. So he was the first $100 million contract guy, $103 million, 10 years.
Jeez.
And now this was when Bill Belichick had first started. He didn't really have much leverage because he didn't have the track record that Jerry Jones now has. So you look at that, like he didn't really have much of a leg to stand on when the backup quarterback was outperforming him. But that's the only reason I hesitate is because when you look at Drew Bledsoe and how that happened, and you also look at just a few years back in 2016, going into that season, Dak Prescott was not supposed to be the starting quarterback. It was supposed to be Tony Romo. And Dak Prescott, he was impressing during preseason, but then Tony Romo gets hurt. Dak Prescott jumps in, and this guy just was electric. Him and Ezekiel Elliott, it was you had Des Bryant having a career resurgence. It was looking great for them. And then Jerry Jones decided to roll with the hot hand. Even when Tony Romo was healthy, they said, let's stick with this guy. They're winning. So Jerry Jones is not unfamiliar with a situation like this. And now I don't know if Dak will be out for long enough so that Cooper Rush will have that chance where Jerry Jones would be crazy to take him out, but it's not out of the question. And I do think Dak Prescott's going to come back. They have to put him in. They're paying him way too much money. I think it's among the most of any quarterback. So that leaves a lot of pressure on Jerry Jones. He looks like a grade A asshat if he gives that type of money. And then he sits him for the backup. He goes, you know what? Never mind after a season. So they got to put him in. But if he struggles, and they got to put in Cooper Rush, and they better not take Cooper Rush out, because your quarterback, who you paid a lot of money to, is not winning games, and your backup's winning. I get it. You paid him all this money, but people are wrong sometimes. You misinterpret the talent. So put in Cooper Rush if this guy fails again. But I think Dak Prescott deserves every chance to come back.
And a little sneaky tidbit. I mean, something you can't neglect in this game is the Rams are 2-2. Rams haven't come out firing and may be dealing with a little bit of that Super Bowl hangover. Even though might not be as prolific when you lose a Super Bowl, but the Rams haven't come out looking like setting the world on fire. They lost to two good football teams in the Bills and the 49ers. I'm not hitting the panic alarm, but this is a sneaky important game for the 49ers. I'm sorry, for the Los Angeles Rams to maybe get back on track. And let's not discredit that. We could see a game that's really important for the LA Rams. And a little history flashback, we can't forget. Sometimes it's written out of history because we like to think that Tom Brady came out and never gave up that job. But let's not forget that Tom Brady left that AFC Championship in 2001 with an ankle injury, and Drew Bledsoe came in and closed out the conference championship game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and there was a lot of controversy leading up to Super Bowl week. Would it be Bledsoe? Would it be Brady? So this might not be a black and white. It's over once the decision is made. This might be something we see with if the Cowboys get on track and make a run in the playoffs. Granted, I don't think the Cowboys are going to make a run in the playoffs. It's the Cowboys, but we'll see.
And this for us here sitting as football analysts, this would be great to cover if Cooper Rush actually makes this interesting. Let's say the Cowboys make a run and Cooper Rush is in the middle of it, or Dak Prescott makes some noise too. I don't want to see this disappoint because this is kind of fun to cover, because the Cowboys didn't have many expectations and they lost with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott gets hurt. They go 3-0 with Cooper Rush. Dak Prescott's knocking on the door of coming back. They're facing a team that was a slam dunk contender as a Super Bowl, excuse me, to make the Super Bowl. If they win, oh boy, that would be such a great story. And then Dak Prescott comes back and they struggle. And then Cooper Rush comes back. Dak Prescott comes back somehow and he plays well again. Boy, that would create some noise. And that would be so much fun to cover here on the Fumblerooski podcast. But once again, I would like to move on for time constraints. So if you guys have any thoughts, speak now, forever hold your peace. Anything else on Cowboys versus
more
Rams?
Cowboys than I really prefer to talk, so I'm good.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, that is the most positive Cowboys talk you will get from the Fumblerooski podcast, and this has been pretty fun to talk about. But I think the Cowboys have overstayed our welcome here. But we're going to move on to the Fumblerooski Fantasy Fix, where we're going to give you some stardom sit-ems. So if you're looking for who to start in your fantasy lineup, stick around and don't go anywhere. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is Watkins! Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast. Adam Wright here with CJ Medeiros, special guest Derek Houle. We've reached the Fumblerooski Fantasy Fix portion of our show where you are going to get your stardom sit-ems of this week's slate of games. And as I look at this, I accidentally put in 3 stardoms. So you're welcome there. And we only have 1 sit-em. So if either of you want to name real quick a sit-em after I list these guys, feel free. But for starts, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Las Vegas. And we have Pat's running backs. So Ramondre Stevenson or Damian Harris versus Detroit. For sits, we have J.K. Dobbins versus Cincinnati. And I accidentally put James Robinson as a sit when we intended him as a start. So James Robinson versus Houston, start him. But you guys, a sit-em for real quick for running backs. Shoot.
Oh, man, you're putting me on the spot here.
I just noticed it right now.
Well, a guy I'm not looking too forward to is James Conner. I think he goes against the Eagles, and he's going to be in a negative game script. They're going to have to throw in the ball, so he might get some targets. He doesn't factor in a ton to the passing game, but he might be out there just to divvy up the work with Eno Benjamin and Darrell Williams. So I'm not too confident in James Conner this week going against an Eagles team that has played a lot from the lead. So I just think the Cardinals won't be inclined to run the ball as much in this game against the Eagles. So he's someone I have hesitancy on. And just to touch on one of your starts with the Patriots backfield, Damian Harris or Ramondre, I say start them both. I think you could see 200 yards on the ground for the Patriots, 250 maybe if it is indeed Bailey Zappi. New England is not, in fact, happy for Zappi. We just need to get through this time, and I think the Bill's going to take the ball out of his hands, and no weather like there was in Buffalo last year, but we might see 10 pass attempts from the New England Patriots offense this week. I think they're going to feed Ramondre, they're going to feed Damian, and dare this terrible defense to stop.
Yeah, that's a backfield that I do really like, and it sucks that they have to go to this type of offense during a time where we're breaking out the vintage jerseys. I'm really excited to see that game. And I wish I could be – my girlfriend's going to the game. I can't go. So that'll be a little jealous there. But so –
Wait,
yeah,
Adam, don't you want to sit them for me or no?
we got our sit-em.
Oh,
but I like James Conner because he's also very he's very touchdown dependent and negative game script. Those are 2 factors that just combine to doesn't look very good. And plus the Eagles defense has been very stingy so far this season. Great start for the Eagles, but do not put James Conner in your lineups. But moving on to wide receivers, start Josh Reynolds at New England. Start Chris Olave versus Seattle. As for sits for wide receiver, sit Jarvis Landry versus Seattle. And then Devontae Smith, we are going to sit him. Going over to quarterbacks, we're going to start Tom Brady at Atlanta. We're going to also put in Joe Burrow at Baltimore. And as for sits for quarterback, it's Kyler Murray versus Philadelphia. This is a bold one, and I don't know if you will actually bench Kyler Murray, but I'm not banking on him having a great game. That Philadelphia defense is really tough, and Kyler Murray tends to struggle in games like this. So sit him if you can. Trevor Lawrence versus Houston, put him on your bench. I know people have been very high on Trevor Lawrence after the start he's had to the season, but don't get too carried away with him because Houston actually does have a decent defense against quarterbacks. Tight ends, we're going to start Will Dissly versus Houston, along with Tyler Conklin versus Miami. Sits, we're going to go with Dalton Schultz at Los Angeles. He's had a tough start to the season. And I don't think if he gets it going, it's not going to be this week at at Los Angeles. We're also going to sit Robert Tonyan versus the Giants. Going on to defenses, we're going to start the Vikings versus Chicago, and we're going to start Miami at New York, at the New York Jets. I'll add. For sits, we're going to go Bengals at Baltimore and Cardinals versus Philly. So put those guys on your bench. That'll do it for the Fumblerooski Fantasy Fix. And up next, we're going to have Derek Houle's guest segment, where he's going to talk about some World Series predictions as the MLB postseason is basically here.
Started 2 hours ago.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So it's crazy that the regular season has gone by so quick. It's also really upsetting that our Red Sox have not made the postseason after a crazy collapse this July. But, always next year, even though next year I'm not sure if things will be better. But we're going to get to some World Series predictions next. This is the Fumblerooski Podcast.
Way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
This is the Fumblerooski Podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros, Derek Houle. Welcome to the guest segment of our show, sponsored by Secret Weapon Consulting for business plans, secret shoppers, bar spotting, server and manager training, and so much more. Visit www.secretweaponconsulting.com. So for our guest segment, we have Derek Houle, who's going to talk about some World Series predictions for this MLB postseason that has just begun. So Derek, what do you got?
All right, so I'm excited for this postseason. I think there's a lot of dynamic teams. Of course, the Dodgers, who won 111 games, the most in the National League since 1918, I believe, something like that. It's still a really long time since you had a team that successful in the National League regular season. But I'm going to go another direction. Now, as a big Red Sox fan, it hurts me to say that I think the most entertaining World Series that we could get would be a Subway Series in New York between the Mets and the Yankees. So that's what I'm going with. I hate to root for them because I think I hate the Yankees. I've kind of just in my blood. It's in my nature. But I would really, really love to see a matchup between the Mets and the Yankees. I think it would be entertaining. Two teams that are really good for most of the season. We're the two best teams in baseball. They hit a little bit of their, hit a bump in the road come August, and in September. Mets lost the division to the Braves in the last 8 days of the year. But I am taking the New York Mets and their dynamic pitching staff to take on the New York Yankees, and they will beat the Yankees in a 6-game series. I'm really excited to see this happen. I think both teams are good on both sides. I think you're going to get a back-and-forth series. It's going to be some real memorable moments. And after this, I think we're going to see the Yankees and Mets both lose their star player, DeGrom leaving the Mets, maybe for Atlanta, and Aaron Judge leaving the Yankees, maybe here in Boston. You never know. But that's what I got for the World Series, and I hope you guys enjoy the October and going into November because of the lockup. But I hope you enjoy the postseason like I will.
Tell us a little more about your prediction that Aaron Judge is going to be a Red Sox, because that's a scolding hot take. And
I thought I could slip that in there. So when it happens, if it does happen, I can kind of come back and say, "Oh, I called this back in October." But I will touch on it.
I was going to say you dropped that like really subtly.
I tried to keep it subtle. I tried to sneak it in. I tried to sneak it in so I could come back to it, but I'll touch on it. I think the Red Sox are primed to spend a little bit this offseason. I'm eager to see what they can do. Aaron Judge is the type of runs producer that they might be willing to spend money on with Heim and his sabermetrics and his analytics that have kind of ruined the game. Xander Bogaerts was a very good shortstop for the Red Sox this year. However, he was not a runs producer. He kind of slapped the ball around here and there, hit for a great average, which might have bought him a bigger contract 5-10 years ago before we really started, and even 20 years before we started considering driving runs in. But Aaron Judge is that guy. He's a runs producer. No matter where you put him in the lineup, he's got a good, solid outfielder. Of course, the backside of these big major contracts aren't always pretty. So I'm not predicting it to be some kind of slam dunk. But I think he's the type of player that the Red Sox might break the bank for and give a $350 million contract that they didn't give to Mookie Betts that we were upset about. So I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I've always loved Xander Bogaerts. He's been one of my favorite players, actually probably my favorite player of the past, let's say 10 years. He started his career when I first started watching baseball during the 2013 World Series run, and he's been on the team ever since. He's their longest tenured player. And as great as he's been, he hasn't exactly lived up to his potential. He was supposed to be a top 2-3 shortstop in the league. In some years he has been that, but his average has been there like it's supposed to. His power really hasn't. To hit, 16 home runs this year? That's a little underwhelming for me. Like, there were a couple years where he hit 30 and he hit for over 300. I'm like, okay, this is the guy who I want leading our franchise. But there's also years like this and last year as well, where it's like 15 to 20. It's good, but it's not great. And then you have Aaron Judge here, who's hitting for average. Granted, it's a career year. He's never hit for average like this, but average and power, you'd be crazy not to try and get him, even if he was a Yankee. Still, Aaron Judge, I like as a Yankee. I like having that. Call me like a Red Sox fan who just loves, I just love the rivalry. But he feels that guy to root, like that guy to, you can respect but root against. Like, it's like Derek Jeter going to the Red Sox. Like, yeah, like he's great. He'd be great as a Red Sox. I'd love him. But he's a Yankee. And he's been a Yankee for quite a few years. I don't know. I get it. I don't know. I'm a little conflicted on that front, but not to say that he wouldn't be a great piece to that team.
I don't see this as a super likely thing, but it's the type of thing that it's the type of thing the Red Sox could kind of be sneaky about. There's a lot of sneaky signings in the last few years. I just think if they're gonna give a guy a big contract, it might be him. They have minimal tax tax liability in terms of the CBA. There's room in the budget to go get a guy. I would prefer they replace with Carlos Correa. I think he's a guy they could give a big contract to have a Story Correa up the middle tandem. But I think it's an offseason the Red Sox fans should keep an eye on.
Yeah, actually, one team I've been thinking a lot about, and I told you a little bit about this off camera, for Judge to land at, is the Los Angeles Dodgers. So this would suck, and it would be a very bad look for the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry, because the Dodgers already swiped Mookie Betts from us, from my Red Sox, our Red Sox, since we're all Red Sox fans here in this show. Then they get Aaron Judge, and they have both of those guys in the outfield. The Dodgers suddenly have turned into the Yankees of old. Like, that's who they are now. They're getting all these players. They have a stacked farm system. They have all this talent everywhere. They spend. They trade for players. That's a team that's been going to the playoffs left and right ever since, what was it? 2013 was the last time was when they first started, going to the playoffs left and right. They only have one world championship to show for it, and it was the COVID year. So I guess in that way you could compare them to the 90s Braves, where they're making it every single year and they only have one World Series to show for it. But I mean, they're doing I kind of respect the Dodgers. They're doing everything they can to improve their organization. They're everything that I would expect the Red Sox to be. Now, the Red Sox, they may not always make the playoffs, but I think there's no excuse for a team with the resources that they have to ever be finishing last place. They have money. They're a professional organization. I know they can evaluate talent, so they can build up a farm system. So I call me crazy. I kind of liked it when they had Dave Dombrowski. I did. They won a World Series because of him. He went out and they got pieces that they needed. And eventually they won a World Series. And Chaim Bloom is developing talent, but he's being too conservative. Way too conservative. But that's just a Red Sox take. I want to go a little bit back towards your World Series prediction. So Mets Yankees. Do you have the Mets beating the Yankees?
Mets in 6 games. Yeah, I think it's going to be an electric series. I'd really look forward to that. I think it would just spark a good turnout. It'd be a good product. It'd be an interesting time of year though, because of the lockout that the MLB had. That would be a November World Series. It's going to get cold. It's going to be an interesting one. So I'm curious to see how that would play out. But I'd love to see that.
So can you see the Yankees winning the World Series, or can you just not fathom it because we're all Red Sox fans?
I don't think so. No.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't.
It's not my DNA.
Listen, I respect the Yankees. I think they're a great organization, and they're a team that people should look up to. Should hate, because I hate them. But look, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want this team out in the first round.
I agree.
I want them out. I want them out. They can't win number 28. Don't do it. Don't do it. Give us that. I want that talking point to say, since 2000, that last Yankee rivalry, you have one World Series in 22 years. We got to keep that talking point because we're holding on to it for dear life.
Because it's all we got, because we're never getting to 27.
We're not getting there. And another thing to add on to that, this is something I always mention to Yankee fans. Most of their World Series were when there were, 15 or less teams in the league? There was now a lot of them were with 30. That late 90s to 2000s dynasty was legit. That was a good one. But besides that, there weren't many teams in the league for most of their World Series victories, which is why I believe no team will ever repeat the success that the Yankees just had. No team will ever do it because there's just too much competition now. And there's too many other ways to win. This analytics thing, it's a pain in the ass, but it's creating more. It's leveling the playing field more, and it opens opportunities for teams like the Oakland A's and the Tampa Bay Rays or the Pittsburgh Pirates to contend because now they have a different way to win. And because of that, all these other teams who are big market teams who could just spend away, the Dodgers of the world, even the Cubs, Red Sox, Yankees, they can't do what they did before. You can't just win World Series left and right. So, that's another thing that I use. But you got to be smart if you're a Red Sox fan or arguing with Yankee fans because it is hard to go against we have 27 rings.
Sure.
But how many were you born for?
All right. Well, I'm glad we were able to talk on this World Series.
Absolutely. But do you guys have any other thoughts before we end the show here tonight?
I don't really watch baseball, so sorry I didn't really contribute. But I personally, with me and my limited knowledge, I don't see Aaron Judge going to Boston. I feel like probably one of the Cali teams because for some reason people want to go to California. God knows why.
Yeah, and I question whether or not he's even willing. That Chaim is even going to be willing to spend because he's so fixed on the analytics. But ownership could step in and say, "Guys,
wait, hold on.
We need to do."
Is Chaim the guy from the A's who was on the A's?
No, he was in the Rays organization.
Okay,
and the Rays are they're a small market team, so they have to operate that way. But right now,
I see. Because I remember there was a guy on. Sorry, I remember there was a guy on the A's that was like all analytics. He turned them around until they got crushed in the playoffs.
Bean,
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know baseball, so you got to forgive me.
It's all good.
But listen, All right, and I'll end with this because we are going over an hour now. I'll end with this. If you are a small market GM and you go to a big market team, at least use your resources. It's you have these things. You don't have to operate like you have no money. So that's just, that's what's pissing me off about Chaim Bloom, because he has resources here in Boston and he didn't. I wanted Mookie Betts back, and they're going to let Bogarts go. They're going to let Devers go. And I hope ownership steps in and says, stop it. But all right, guys. Well, Derek, thank you so much for joining the show. Let me know if you want to come back on. It was great having you back, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me. I love and enjoy coming on and chatting with you guys about the upcoming season. Maybe we can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yep.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening to us. We have new episodes out on Tuesdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have all our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Over and out.